Have you ever looked into multiple exposure images? This is where somebody has taken two or more images and they're kind of blended together to create something which is almost abstract, might even be very abstract in some cases. Now, I must admit, it's something I've been thinking about having a go at, but the camera that I normally use, this one, doesn't have the ability to do multiple exposures in camera. That doesn't mean to say that I can't do them at all, because I can always do them in post, in Photoshop. So today, well, this week I was planning on going out and checking out a new location, but I've got a cold and it's really giving me some very painful sinuses, and I really just don't fancy going out. So I thought, you know what, I'll have a go at it today, and I thought, you know what, I'll make a video of it as well because it might be of interest. And also in today's video I wanted to share with you the results of the little vote that I put out there in my last video about whether or not I should be showing camera settings information in my videos going forwards. So long as my voice holds out, I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. So as I said, I've got a cold, my sinuses are painful, so I'm hoping my voice comes across okay. I just didn't feel like going out, and I decided while I was stuck at home I'd have a go at doing some of these multiple exposure images in Photoshop, because the camera that I choose to shoot with doesn't have the ability to do them in camera. But I want to keep this as simple as possible and as close to the kind of effects I might be able to get in camera as I possibly can. So in a second we're going to jump onto Photoshop and have a look at a couple of examples of that. But first I wanted to do the results of the little vote that I put out there in my last video, which was all to do with whether I should continue showing technical information, settings information for my photos on my videos going forwards. So let's talk about what the results of that little survey was. I've broken the answers to that little survey down into three categories. So the first category is people who said, get rid of it, don't show the information anymore. But that was actually only 5% of the people who responded. Then there was the second category, and this was people who said, well, we're not particularly interested in that information ourselves, but we don't mind it. You know, if you want to put it on there, that's great, and it may be useful for some other people to see. And that was 29% of the people who commented and voted. So that leaves 67% of people who asked me to keep on showing the information, either because they found it interesting and useful themselves, or they felt it was in keeping with what I'm trying to do in my videos of, you know, trying to share knowledge and, you know, maybe help photographers develop. So the people have spoken, and that means that that information will continue to be shown in the videos going forwards. Although I might streamline it a little bit, I might change the way it's displayed, and we'll see how that comes out in the next video, because in this one I'm not taking any new images, I'm working with images that I've already shot. Because what I wanted to do was have a look at this multiple exposure effect. And I've seen multiple exposure effects used in two ways. One way is kind of as a souped up intentional camera movement, where people will take the camera and they will take multiple exposures while the camera's moving. So same as ICM, but instead of using long exposures, using multiple exposures. The other way that I've seen it done is when people take exposures of completely different compositions, completely different but somehow related and linked, and then have those merged together. And I must admit, that's the kind that appeals to me more. And I looked at some of the images I've shot recently, and I've got a couple that I think might work on this. And what I was looking for was images where I've got a wider scene or a bigger subject, or a lot of a subject, but I've also got a close-up or a more intimate shot as well. And I think that might work really well if I bring those two together and create this multiple exposure effect, which I'm going to do in Photoshop because I'm going to need the layers. So what we're going to do in a second is jump onto Photoshop and run through a couple of examples and see what I can do. I haven't actually tried this yet, so I don't know if it's going to work or not. You're seeing it at the same time that I am, and well, I'll leave it up to you to judge what you think. For the purposes of this exercise, I've picked two pairs of images. Now, each pair is from the same photo shoot. So the first two images, the first pair, are actually from the photo shoot that I did in the orange groves in my last video. And I've picked this image, which is a wider image, although it was shot with a telephoto lens. It's a wider image of an orange tree with lots of oranges on. And I've picked this image of this sort of nice cluster of oranges with leaves around and a shallow depth of field dropping back. Now, as you can see, this second image is cropped as a square crop, which is what I did as a standard isolated on its own image. But for the purposes of this exercise in Photoshop, I've actually imported the original uncropped version, which is a 3x2. Now, the approach that I'm going to take to this is really simple. What I'm going to do is drag this image, which is the close-up image, over the top of the wider image. Just drag it over the top in Photoshop. I'm just going to hold down the shift key. No, I don't think I'll bother actually. Let's just drop that on the top there. And it kind of fits over the top. Now, I've got all sorts of options here. I could change the blend mode and all the rest of it, but what I'm trying to do is kind of replicate a multiple exposure effect in camera. So all I'm going to do is change the opacity of the layer. So I'm going to bring it down to 50% opacity on that top layer, or thereabouts. Yeah, 50%. So what I've got now is the close-up shot is at 50% opacity, and then showing through that is the background shot with all of the trees. Now, I think I could probably actually stretch out this top layer a little bit. Normally I wouldn't stretch an image this way because of losing quality, but it's obviously it's not going to be sharp anyway because it's at 50% opacity. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to hit the Control T for the free transform, and I'm just going to stretch it out and make it a bit bigger and kind of position the cluster of large oranges just off to one side. Maybe just shift it a little bit that way. And that looks quite nice, but I now feel the whole thing just looks a bit dark, so I'm going to pop a brightness and contrast layer on the top, bring the brightness up, just make the whole thing look a bit brighter, and also just hit the contrast a bit as well, just creating an effect. Actually, do you know what? I think that kind of works. I mean, it's a very similar effect that you could achieve with an in-camera multiple exposure. So I don't feel like I've cheated too much. But yeah, kind of works. So that's one image done. For my next pair of images, I've actually picked a couple of images that I shot in the previous video at El Rocaral. And the first one is this wide shot looking across one of the ponds with the trees and reflections and all of the reeds reflected over here. Now, actually, shortly before I shot this one, I shot another image with a telephoto lens, which is focused in on this entire area here. And it's this one. But what I did with this one is I actually inverted it. I flipped it 180 degrees to kind of increase that abstract feel. And I'm thinking that putting these two over the top of, or one over the top of the other, and blending it in the same way might make for an interesting effect. So we'll get them into Photoshop and then we'll have a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to drag this image over the top of the other one. Like that. Then we're just going to have to line it up. They're the same size image because neither of them were cropped. Okay. And then I'm going to bring the opacity on this one down to 50% again. Doesn't matter if it's not exact. And again, it's an interesting effect, but I feel that it needs probably some brightness and contrast putting in again. So make it quite a bit brighter and quite a bit more contrasty. Might be a bit too bright actually. Oops. And potentially a bit more vibrance on this one. Punching some vibrance because it's abstract. It's not supposed to be an accurate representation. Maybe even a bit of saturation. Do you know what I actually think would look better is if I put the more detailed layer, the intimate layer, the right way up instead of being inverted. So I'm just going to click on Control T and flip it the other way up. Yeah, I think that looks better. Let me bring the opacity on that up a little bit. Probably a little bit too much vibrance in there and saturation. So we'll pull it back just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to pop a tone curve on this one just to kind of change the effect a little bit. Just like I've done a slightly different exposure on it. But I mean, it's certainly something different. Not going to be to everybody's taste, I'm sure, but there you go. I didn't actually shoot any of these images with the purpose of doing this kind of effect. I've just picked ones that I think might work. If I was going to do this more seriously, then what I would probably do is pick or actually go out and shoot images specifically for this purpose. So think about it in advance, plan it in advance. And you know, maybe the results will be better, but actually I quite like what I've got here. I think they're quite interesting. Whether anybody else likes them or not, well, I don't know. You tell me what you think. Do you like them? If not, that's fine. Anyway, I'm hoping that I'll soon be sufficiently recovered to get out and do some more in the field stuff. It's mostly the sinuses that are stopping me from getting out, so hopefully they'll clear up soon. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, like, shares and comments, always really appreciated. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more of my stuff, whether it's editing or out in the field, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go if you're new here. And as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you very much. And until the next video, bye.